A construction crew shut down a $38 million pipeline project because of a $62 deed a retired surveyor bought at a county auction. And the company that built the pipeline never once thought to ask him why he bought it. How do you plan for something 20 years before anyone else knows it's coming? The foreman's name was Teller, and he called the company lawyer at 6:50 on a Monday. Not the site lawyer, the company lawyer. The one whose number was only for emergencies. The pipeline crew had been working the north corridor of Harlan County for 11 days. 41 workers, 3 excavators. A compressor station already poured and cured 2 miles out, and they had stopped cold because of a strip of land, 14 feet wide, running 3/4 of a mile along the old Caldwell Road margin. County records showed a deed. The deed showed a name. The name was not on any of the right-of-way acquisition forms Meridian Energy had filed with the county 3 years ago. The lawyer's name was Stokes. He asked how wide the strip was. 14 feet, Teller said. Stokes was quiet for a moment. Then he said he needed to make some calls. The name on the deed was Leonard Marsh. Leonard Marsh was sitting on his back porch with a cup of coffee when his phone rang that same morning. He looked at the number. He recognized it. He had been waiting for it for 14 years. Go back to September 1999. Harlan County Municipal Surplus Sale. They held it in the annex room of the county assessor's building on Route 12. 6 folding tables end to end. A 30-cup coffee urn that nobody had cleaned since spring. A ceiling fan that spun on its slowest setting and moved the warm air in slow circles. 12 people in chairs. Half of them farmers who had come for a drainage easement dispute 2 lots earlier and were still finishing their coffee. The auctioneer that day was a county employee named Bud Farrell. He read lot descriptions the way a man reads a grocery list when he is not hungry. Flat, fast, no drama. Lot 9 came up just after 10:30. Farrell read Parcel 9F. 14 feet of deeded road buffer running along the east margin of Old Caldwell Road. County held since a 1996 tax default, half-mile length. One hand-dug well cased in stone located at the southern midpoint. No improvements, no structure. Minimum bid $62 to cover back tax costs. Nobody moved. Leonard raised his hand. Creighton Voss was in the back of the room. He was 44 years old, regional director of land acquisition for Meridian Energy, and he had been assembling parcels in the North Corridor for 18 months. He wore a button-down shirt with a company logo on the chest, and he carried a leather folio that was never more than 12 inches from his right hand. He had purchased 4 lots that morning already. He was waiting on 2 more. When Leonard raised his hand for Lot 9, Voss looked up from his folio and took a slow look at the man bidding. Leonard was 57. He wore work pants and a flannel shirt with the top button undone. He had driven to the auction in a truck with 180,000 miles on it. He did not look like a man who posed problems for anyone. Voss made a sound. It wasn't a full laugh. It was the sound a man makes when something confirms what he already believes about the world. A short exhale through the nose, the kind that means he has already sorted you into a category and found the category small. The farmer sitting to Voss's right glanced over. Voss tilted his head toward Leonard and said quietly but not quietly enough, 14 feet and a dry well. He said it the way you say something that needs no explanation. The farmer smiled because Voss was smiling. Farrell said 62 going once, 62 going twice. He tapped the table. Sold Lot 9, the gentleman in the flannel. Leonard walked to the clerk's table. He paid $62 in cash. The clerk wrote out the receipt by hand. Lot 9F, parcel number HC 197409, $62. Date stamp September 14, 1999. She folded it across the middle and held it out. Leonard took it. He slid it into the inside pocket of his jacket, flat against his chest. He walked back to his seat. He picked up his coffee cup. He sat. Voss bought Lot 11 20 minutes later for $14,800 and left before noon. He did not look at Leonard again on his way out. Leonard drove home on Caldwell Road and slowed as he passed the strip. 14 feet of shoulder grass and a ring of laid fieldstones half buried in the ground. He looked at it for 3 seconds through the windshield. Then he drove on. His wife Ruth was hanging laundry when he pulled in. She watched him come across the yard. She could read the way he walked the same way she could read weather. The set of his shoulders told her something had gone right. You got it. Yes. The 14 feet. Yes. She nodded and went back to the laundry. She did not ask what the 14 feet were for. In 38 years of marriage, she had learned that when Leonard bought something without talking about it first, the talking came later, and the later was always worth waiting for. Leonard went inside. He sat at the kitchen table with his notebook, a narrow green hardcover that Ruth had given him years ago for recording survey notes, which he had mostly used for recording things he found in county records, and he opened it to a fresh page. He wrote the date, he wrote the parcel number, he wrote $62. Then he wrote one more line beneath that and drew a box around it. He did not show the box line to anyone. The ceiling fan turned slowly. The truck ticked in the driveway. Ruth came in from the yard and put the kettle on without saying anything. The man who had laughed at the auction, or made the sound that was close enough to a laugh, would spend the next 14 years building something he could not finish because of those 14 feet. He just did not know it yet. But Leonard did. Leonard had read the 1974 Mineral Rights Corridor filing. He had read the 1981 Pipeline Feasibility Study. He had read the 1993 County Board Minutes where a commissioner first floated the idea of a natural gas transmission line running north through the Caldwell Road margin. He had traced the chain of title on Parcel 9F through 4 county deed books over the course of 8 months. He had confirmed, on a rainy afternoon in the county clerk's sub-basement the previous January, that the hand-dug well was not just an old well. It sat directly on a water table that crossed beneath the only viable route for a pipeline through the North Corridor. Any pipeline built there would need to either reroute around the strip, which the terrain would not allow, or negotiate with the deed holder for access rights and compensation. There was one deed holder now, Leonard Marsh, the man in the flannel shirt. The man Creighton Voss had sorted into the small category without ever asking what he knew. Leonard closed his notebook. He put it on the windowsill above the kitchen sink, where he kept the things he needed to see every morning. He drank his coffee. He looked out at the back field. He had $62 in the auction and a document in his coat pocket and a very clear picture of what was going to happen. All he had to do was wait. You haven't seen the half of it yet. What Leonard found buried in those county records is the move nobody at that auction was thinking about. Subscribe now. The next part is where the whole picture clicks into place. A rolled map, brown at the edges. Rubber banded so many times the band had left grooves in the paper. Leonard had pulled it from a lateral filing cabinet in the county clerk's sub-basement on a Thursday in January 1999, 8 months before the auction. And it had taken him 11 minutes to find it because it was filed under a road designation that had been discontinued in 1977 and replaced with a different number, so every index search he had tried before that day had come back empty. The map was a 1971 corridor study for a proposed natural gas transmission route through Harlan County, a county commission study paid for with state infrastructure money, filed with the clerk's office and never retrieved again. The transmission route ran north out of the county's industrial basin through the Caldwell Road margin and terminated at a compressor station site 2 miles past the county line. That route had never been built. The project was canceled in 1975 when the funding consortium dissolved. The study was filed, stamped, and forgotten. The corridor designation was never legally dissolved. It was still on the books, still referenced in the county's infrastructure index, still legally alive. Leonard had stood at the filing cabinet and looked at the map for a long time. Then he had asked for a photocopy. He drove home that Thursday and spread the photocopy on the kitchen table. Ruth was at the stove. The kettle was going. He put a ruler across the map and traced the corridor line with his finger, north up Caldwell Road, tight against the east margin, running directly over a 14-foot strip of road buffer that the county had been sitting on since a 1996 tax default. Parcel 9F, the strip with the stone well at its southern midpoint. The well sat at the exact center of the only viable path through the corridor. Leonard got a blank sheet of paper and drew his own version of the map. Simpler, just the corridor and the strip and the well mark and the county line. He labeled each piece with the parcel numbers he had already traced. He drew a circle around the well mark. He labeled it 9F HC 974009. Ruth set a mug of tea beside his elbow and looked at the drawing without touching it. What are you looking for? What nobody built yet? She went back to the stove. She trusted that answer the way she trusted the way he came across the yard, as a signal, not an explanation. Leonard spent the following 4 months in the sub-basement and the public library 2 towns over, pulling every document tied to the Caldwell corridor. He found the 1981 Pipeline Feasibility Study first, a 60-page engineering report, commissioned by a private energy consortium that had studied the same route as the 1971 county study and reached the same conclusion. The Caldwell margin was the only viable corridor north because the terrain on both sides was either too steep or too wet for an alternative route. The 1981 study identified Parcel 9F by name. It recommended acquisition of the strip as a precondition to any future build. The consortium had dissolved in 1984 without acquiring anything. In the library's newspaper archive, Leonard found a 1993 article from the Harlan County Courier. County Commissioner Wendell Pace had publicly raised the idea of a private energy company partnering with the county on a natural gas transmission line running north through the Caldwell margin. The proposal had attracted 2 letters of inquiry from unnamed energy companies, then gone quiet. Pace had not mentioned it again publicly. Leonard pulled the county board minutes from 1993 to 1998. In the October 1997 minutes, buried in the Infrastructure Committee report, was a single sentence. Right-of-way pre-assessment authorized for Caldwell North Corridor. Results to be reviewed Q2 1998. He wrote that sentence in his notebook word for word. He found the Q2 1998 assessment in the county engineer's records in May of that year. It confirmed the corridor. It confirmed the routing. It identified 3 parcels along the east margin requiring acquisition. It listed parcel 9F as the critical bottleneck, the narrow point where terrain forced the route within 14 feet of the old road buffer, making the strip a mandatory acquisition if any project moved forward. Mandatory acquisition. Those were the engineer's words. Leonard wrote them in his notebook. Then he started watching the land. In July 1998, survey flags appeared in a field 400 yards north of the strip. Orange ones. Spaced at uniform intervals, he wrote the date and the location. In September, a truck with a Meridian Energy logo pulled onto the access road at the north end of the corridor and sat for 40 minutes. He wrote the date and the company name. In October, a separate parcel 2 miles north of the strip, 47 acres of cleared farmland, transferred to a company called Northgate Resources LLC. Leonard pulled the incorporation filing. The registered agent was a law firm with an office address in the same city as Meridian Energy's regional headquarters. He wrote that in the notebook, too. By December 1998, Northgate Resources had recorded deeds on 94 acres north of the strip. A second LLC, Caldwell North Holdings, had filed on 31 acres to the south. Different company names, same city, same law firm, 2 shells, 1 buyer. 125 acres assembled around a 14-foot strip they had not yet acquired. The strip the county was about to put in the surplus auction. Leonard went back to the sub-basement one more time in January 1999. The Thursday he found the rolled map and pulled the full title chain on Parcel 9F. He traced it back to 1946. Every transfer, every lien, every recorded instrument. The well had been dug by a farmer named Alcott in 1953. Alcott had sold the strip to an adjacent landowner in 1961. That owner had let the taxes lapse in 1996. The county had taken it. It sat in the surplus pile untouched for 3 years because nobody thought it was worth the paperwork to auction it. And there was something else. Attached to the 1961 deed transfer was a single recorded note, not a lien, not a covenant, but a notation filed by the county engineer in 1962 that acknowledged the well's connection to the underlying water table and recommended that any future owner be made aware of a state groundwater protection rule that required advance notice and negotiated compensation before any subsurface infrastructure was installed within 30 feet of a documented historic well. The note was still there. Filed in 1962, never removed, never challenged. Sitting in the chain of title like a small door that had been locked for 37 years and nobody had ever tried to open. Leonard made a second photocopy. He clipped it to the map copy. He drove home. He sat at the kitchen table and looked at his hand-drawn map for a long time. He added 1 word to the circle around the well mark. He wrote it in small, plain letters. Then he closed the notebook and put it on the windowsill. Every acre Meridian was buying pointed at a 14-foot strip. Every dollar they spent tightened the funnel. And the only way through the funnel was Parcel 9F, the strip with the well, the notation, and in 9 months, Leonard Marsh's name on the deed. He turned the hand-drawn map face down on the table. He did not need to look at it anymore. He had it memorized, $4,000. The man on the porch said it like a gift. He was young, mid-20s, pressed khakis, a leather portfolio under one arm and a card in his other hand before Leonard had even opened the screen door all the way. His name was Kyle something. Leonard didn't catch the last name. He represented a land services firm that worked with regional infrastructure, developers, and he was not yet at liberty to name the client directly. He said $4,000 for the strip on Caldwell Road. He smiled when he said it. It was the smile of a man who expects the door to open wider. Leonard looked at the portfolio. He looked at Kyle something's pressed khakis. He thanked him. He said no. He said it without moving from the doorway and without changing his expression. The way a man says no to a thing he decided on years ago and has not had cause to reconsider since. Kyle something left a card. Leonard set it on the kitchen counter beside the phone and did not pick it up again. Every spring he paid the tax bill on Parcel 9F. It came in April, the same as the others, $44 a year. He wrote a check. He mailed it. He kept the receipt in the folder he had labeled 9F and stored in the bottom drawer of his desk, behind the survey records. Every spring and every fall he mowed the strip. 14 feet wide, 3/4 of a mile long. He did it with the push mower because the strip was too narrow for the riding one. It took him 50 minutes each time. He kept the fieldstone ring around the well clear of grass and debris. He kept the survey markers visible at each corner of the parcel. He did not talk about the strip to anyone except Ruth, and their conversations about it were short. The world forgot the strip existed. Leonard did not forget. In 2002, Kyle something came back. The offer was $9,500 this time, and the portfolio was thicker, and he mentioned casually, on the porch, with a practiced casualness, that the county was in early discussions with a private energy developer about a right-of-way acquisition program along the Caldwell corridor, and that a county offer, if one came, might be more formal and less flexible than a private one. Leonard thanked him. He said no. He closed the screen door and went back to the kitchen. Ruth was at the kitchen table when he came in. She did not look up from her reading. How much this time? 9.5. Same answer. She turned a page. Leonard poured coffee and sat down across from her. Their daughter Claire came home for Christmas that year. She was 23, just starting a graduate program in land use law. On a Sunday afternoon, she walked the strip with Leonard, the two of them slow along the shoulder of Caldwell Road, Claire with her hands in her coat pockets, Leonard with his thermos. She stopped at the well ring and crouched down to look at the fieldstone. How old is this? The well dug in 1953, and you own everything around it. 14 feet in every direction along the road margin, 3/4 of a mile. She stood up. She looked north along the strip, then south. She said nothing else. Leonard watched her look and said nothing either. She was seeing something, he could tell. She wasn't sure yet what to call it. That was fine. She would know when the time came. In 2005, the county call came. Not Kyle something. A county administrator named Pruder from the infrastructure office, formal and measured on the phone. He explained that Harlan County was facilitating a right-of-way acquisition process in the Caldwell corridor on behalf of a private development partner, and that the county had been authorized to make a preliminary offer on Parcel 9F as part of that process. The offer was $31,000. Pruder read the number with the careful tone of someone who expects it to be accepted. Leonard thanked him for the call. He said no. Pruder said he understood and that the county might follow up in writing. Leonard said that was fine. He hung up. He opened his notebook and wrote, March 2005. County offer $31,000. No, he closed the notebook. He made dinner. On the other side of the corridor, things were not so calm. In the Meridian Energy Regional Office that same week, a project manager named Stearns was on the phone with their legal team for the third time in 2 days. The Caldwell pipeline was fully engineered. The compressor station site was acquired. The north parcels were clear. But the routing still ran through Parcel 9F, and Parcel 9F was owned by a retired land surveyor who had paid $62 for it in 1999 and had now turned down a county-facilitated offer of $31,000 without a counter or a reason. Creighton Voss, who had moved from regional director to vice president of land acquisition in the years since the surplus auction, sat in that meeting and said nothing for a long time. Then he said, find out what he knows. Nobody could find out what Leonard knew, because Leonard had never told anyone. In 2008, the third offer came in person, a lawyer named Carver, 2 hours from the city, gray 3-piece suit. A leather briefcase that was not the kind of briefcase you bought at a department store. He sat at Leonard and Ruth's kitchen table on a Wednesday afternoon, and Ruth poured coffee without being asked and sat in the corner chair with a book she did not open. Carver was polite. He was precise. He explained that his client, now named openly as Meridian Energy, since the project was in public permit filings, had a significant infrastructure investment stalled at a critical juncture, and that the company was prepared to offer $185,000 for a clean transfer of Parcel 9F, including a full release of the 1962 notation and any associated access restrictions. He set the offer letter on the table. It was a single page, very clean, with a signature line at the bottom. Leonard looked at it. He looked at Carver. He looked at the signature line. No, thank you. Carver kept his expression even. He asked if Leonard had a figure in mind. No. Carver drove 2 hours back. He called the following week and said Meridian was prepared to go to $230,000. Final position, he said. Leonard thanked him for calling. He said no. He wrote the number in his notebook. Ruth watched him hang up. She looked at him from across the kitchen the way she had looked at him from across the room for 42 years. Not asking, not pushing, just present, still no. It wasn't a question. Leonard nodded anyway. She picked up her book. Leonard put the notebook back on the windowsill. He looked out at the back field. He thought about Claire, who was now 4 years into her law practice, who had crouched at the well ring on a cold Sunday and looked north along the strip and gone quiet, the way people go quiet when something clicks into place without having a name yet. He thought she was going to need that name soon. On a Tuesday morning in March 2013, the phone rang before Leonard had finished his first cup of coffee. He did not recognize the number. It was a 614 area code, the city, the Meridian Energy City. He looked at the number. He set the coffee cup down on the table, flat and careful, the way you set something down when you know you are going to need both hands. He picked up the phone. Carver's voice was different this time, quieter. The careful precision was still there, but the confidence underneath it was not. He said Meridian Energy was prepared to offer $420 for Parcel 9F. Clean transfer, all encumbrances released, closing within 30 days. He said the number the way a man says a number when he already suspects it. It isn't going to be enough, and he is trying to sound certain anyway. Leonard let him finish. I'm not selling the parcel. Mr. Marsh, 420, I'll have my daughter call you. He hung up. He looked at the notebook on the windowsill. He wrote, March 11, 2013, 420,000 not selling. Then he called Claire. She drove down on a Friday evening with a file box in the back seat. She set the box on the kitchen table next to Leonard's notebook and the hand-drawn map he had first made in 1999 and redrawn once in 2006 when the permit filings changed the compressor station location. She spread the permit file across the table, Meridian's county-filed construction application, the routing diagrams, the right-of-way acquisition reports, all public record, and set Leonard's documents alongside them, the original deed, the 1962 notation from the chain of title, the tax receipts, everyone, going back to September 1999. Ruth made tea and sat in the corner chair. She had a book. She did not open it. Claire read for 40 minutes without speaking. Then she looked up. They pulled the title chain and missed the notation. Yes. And if they try to run the pipeline without clearing it, they're in violation of the state groundwater statute. That's what it says. She looked back at the documents. She turned the 1962 notation over and read the back, which was blank. She looked at the routing diagram. She looked at the well mark on Leonard's hand-drawn map, the circle, the word he had written inside it, small, plain letters. She had asked her father a question at that well ring in 2002 and had gone quiet afterward. She knew now what she had been quietly knowing since then. What do you want? Monthly payment, permanent easement, transfers to you and your brother. How much per month? Enough that they pay for the well every month until the pipeline stops running. Claire called Carver Monday morning. She gave him her name and bar number. She told him her client was not entertaining a purchase of any kind. She told him that if Meridian intended to challenge the 1962 notation or the deed, she would see him in the Harlan County hearing room. She also told him that she had pulled the state groundwater statute, and that the notation was a lawful recorded instrument, and that any attempt to install subsurface infrastructure within 30 feet of the documented well without negotiated compensation would be a statutory violation, not just a civil dispute. Carver said his client would need to consult with their legal team. Meridian's legal team filed an abandonment challenge 6 weeks later. Their argument, the 1962 notation was a non-binding administrative record, not an enforceable lien. It had never been invoked. 51 years of dormancy had rendered it legally inert. It was a careful argument. It did not survive contact with Claire's file. Harlan County hearing room, May 2013. Claire placed 3 documents on the table. First, the original 1962 notation, filed by the county engineer, attached to the chain of title on Parcel 9F, recorded correctly, indexed correctly, never removed, never challenged, never extinguished by any subsequent transfer, including the 1999 county surplus sale, which had conveyed the parcel with all encumbrances attached to title. The transfer deed said so in its own language. Meridian's title search had noted the encumbrance and their acquisition team had not flagged it. That was not Leonard's problem. Second, Meridian Energy's own 1998 pre-feasibility study, the one they had commissioned before beginning land assembly, which referenced the Caldwell corridor routing and identified Parcel 9F as a mandatory acquisition, meaning Meridian had known about the strip's position for 15 years and had simply assumed they could acquire it on their own terms. Third, $44 a year, every year, for 14 years. $616 total in tax receipts. Continuous ownership documented in Harlan County's own revenue records, which is the same as saying the county itself had acknowledged Leonard's active ownership every April for 14 consecutive years. Abandonment requires relinquishment. A man who pays property taxes annually on a parcel for 14 years has not relinquished anything. There is no abandonment here because there was no gap. The county collected his tax check every spring. You cannot collect a man's money for 14 years and then argue in your own courthouse that he abandoned the property you were collecting money on. The hearing officer ruled in 50 seconds. Carver reached for his phone before he had closed his briefcase. The negotiation that followed took 11 days. Claire ran it from a single sheet of terms. Leonard had written them out at the kitchen table on a Sunday morning in plain numbered sentences, same as he did everything. No sale, no lump sum. A permanent recorded easement conveying Meridian Energy's right to install and maintain pipeline infrastructure across Parcel 9F in exchange for a monthly structural access fee of $900, inflation adjusted, every 3 years, transferable in full to Leonard's heirs upon his death, for the operational life of the pipeline. Carver pushed back on the inflation adjustment. Claire did not respond for 3 days. On the 4th day, she sent the term sheet again, unchanged. Carver pushed back on the transfer clause. Claire did not respond for 2 days. On the 3rd day, she sent the term sheet again. On day 11, Carver called and said Meridian accepted all terms. Claire called her father. He answered on the first ring. They took it. All of it. Everything you wrote down. Good. He set the phone on the counter. He walked to the kitchen. Ruth was at the stove. She did not ask. She read his face the way she had been reading it for 42 years, and she turned and put the kettle on. That was the whole conversation. It was enough. Leonard drove to the county clerk's office on a Thursday morning and filed the recorded easement. Book 103, page 71. The clerk stamped it and slid his copy across the counter. He walked to the truck. He sat in the cab. He opened the notebook Ruth had given him for survey notes 30 years ago and turned to the last page with writing on it, then to the blank page after it. He wrote 6 words, 9F easement recorded, 900 NAMO permanent. He capped the pen. He put the notebook on the passenger seat. He drove home on Caldwell Road and slowed as he passed the strip. 14 feet of shoulder grass, 3/4 of a mile, a ring of field stones half buried in the ground at the southern midpoint, exactly where Alcott had dug it in 1953. He looked at it for 3 seconds through the windshield. Then he drove on. 2 weeks later, a brief item ran in the Harlan County Courier, easement filed, Meridian Energy, Caldwell Corridor. Kyle something, who was by then selling commercial real estate in a city 2 counties over, read it on his phone on his lunch break and sat for a moment doing math he should have done in 1999. Creighton Voss saw the filing in a project update memo and did not comment. His assistant noted his silence and moved on to the next item. There was nothing to say. The strip had always been the strip. Leonard had simply been the only one in the room who knew what that meant. Some men measure land in acres. Leonard Marsh measured it in what the land would eventually owe, and he had the patience to wait for the bill to come due. He paid $62 in 1999. He collected $900 a month starting in 2013, and every month after that for the life of the pipeline. Now here's the question. If Carver had walked into your kitchen with $420,000 cash and a clean transfer document, would you have signed it? Or would you have held the line for the monthly deal? Drop your answer in the comments, and if you made it all the way here, you already know which kind of person Leonard Marsh would have respected.